we received this statement from Royal Caribbean. They said, quote, "There seems to be confusion about whether we secured the Smith cabin and the metal overhang where it is thought that the blood was found. Once our security officers were alerted to the stain on the overhang and were unable to locate the Smiths in their cabin, they immediately secured both areas and posted a guard outside the Smiths' cabin." Turkish authorities, that's important, Turkish authorities immediately called by the ship arrived shortly afterwards and began a forensic investigation of both sites. Once they had completed their investigation, they released both areas. Only then was the metal overhang washed at approximately 6 p.m. That's what they're saying, 6 p.m. that night. The cabin, despite being cleared by authorities, remained secured and out of service for several weeks. So right now I want to also bring in our panel of experts. We have Adriana Gardella. She's a former prosecutor and now an editor at Justice Magazine. Private investigator Vito Corlucci and maritime attorney Jack Hickey. He spent 15 years doing legal work for the cruise lines. Jack, I want to start with you. You've seen the statement, obviously, from Royal Caribbean. You heard about a passenger on the scene. We understand Royal Caribbean sent an attorney on to investigate. Tell us about her and tell us whether she's a professional, independent investigator.
Well, thank you, Joe. I appreciate it. First of all, the statement from the cruise line that you just read is very interesting because that statement does not give a timeline. If you notice, they use words like immediately, they use words like they're right on it, but it does not give a timeline. And in fact, you had on, Scarborough Country had on Michael Cry, the International Council of Cruise Lines president, who said, and I have a transcript of it, he said, Royal Caribbean's highest priority is to bring this to closure and to provide answers. They have not provided answers at all. What they have done, and I'll give you a timeline and then answer, in answer really to your question. 4 a.m., Cleet Hyman, and again, Scarborough Country apparently located Cleet Hyman, the passenger in the cabin next door to the George Smith cabin, and I think here it's appropriate to say that the Scarborough Country has done a better job at investigating this than the cruise line did. Because at 4 a.m., that's when the passenger hears the thump in the room after arguing and male voices on the balcony. At 7 a.m., sources say that the cleanup or cover-up, whichever you choose to see this as, was started. 7 a.m. they started cleaning up the blood. And
hey, Jack, we got to go to break right now, but I want to ask you really quickly before we go to break.
Yep.
It's our job to get to the bottom of this, but for a cruise line that sends on one of their own attorneys to do an investigation, is that attorney's job to cover the cruise line's rear, or is it their job to solve a crime?
Yeah, that attorney is retained by the insurance company, and they are looking out to cover the cruise line's rear in the case of a civil suit. That's all that is. That's
all right, Jack.
Information gathering.
Jack, stay with us. We want to get to the bottom of this. We appreciate it. Our panel also is going to be helping us get to the bottom of it. A lot more when Scarborough Country returns. Plus, we're going to take you onto the crime scene with a former FBI investigator. It's full-blown CSI, but it's CSI on the Mediterranean when Scarborough Country returns. Jack Hickey, I want to ask you about the way this whole thing's gone down. I've been very critical of the Aruban investigation, very critical of the investigation that also took place on this cruise line. But let me ask you, you worked for cruise lines for 15 years. Is this their M.O.? I mean, again, they bring their insurance lawyer on, again, to try to clean it up, to do risk assessment, to see if they're going to be sued. Is that the way it's usually done?
Well, I think it is. I mean, here you've got to, actions speak louder than words. Their words are in their statements that their priorities are to get to the bottom of this. But I think what we're seeing here is that they send an insurance company lawyer from Miami. I'm in Miami, and this is where the cruise lines is based. They sent a lawyer from Miami who is known to represent the insurance companies of the cruise lines. That's who they send over there. You know, not professional investigators. They send over there like 5-6 days after the July 5th, the time when he was missing, to interview people in a conference room. And this is not somebody trained Joe, to collect evidence, to take blood samples and things like that. Lawyers were not really
what's he trained to do? What is she trained to do?
She's trained to collect statements that are going to reflect well on the cruise lines and poorly on any potential case against the cruise lines. And and the cruise line said, well, gee, she turned over her statements to the FBI. Well, so what? These are all, of course, going to be slanted statements. That's not somebody, it's not a professional investigator or a neutral investigator. And the other thing is, as far as investigation, nobody's talking about the video from the casino. What about that? And the cruise line's responsibility, if they are plying these folks and encouraging these folks to drink and gamble, and this guy may have won thousands of dollars, they've got videos in the casinos to keep track of their money. I would think that they could use the videos maybe to keep track of George Smith and the folks who escorted him back to his room.